At 20 degrees below zero, absolute silence isn't peaceful, it is a predator. While most people are tucked away in their heated homes, thousands of homeless people living in RVs are fighting an invisible war right on our city streets. These aren't just people down on their luck. Out of necessity, they have become accidental engineers of thermal dynamics. They discovered a counterintuitive truth that survival experts rarely talk about. In the most brutal conditions, turning on a heater might actually kill you faster than the freezing cold itself. It sounds insane, almost like a lie fabricated to scare you, but there is one critical, often fatal mistake that turns artificial heat into a death sentence for the homeless. Let me tell you the harsh reality about recreational vehicles that the glossy brochures will never admit. To a homeless person trying to survive the night, an RV isn't a home. It is basically a glamorous aluminum coffin on wheels. Consider the physics for a second. A standard residential house protects you with walls packed with 6 inches of dense insulation. But in an RV, you are lucky if you get 2 inches. Sometimes it is barely 1 inch of fluff separating you from hypothermia. That is thinner than a gas station sandwich and about as effective at stopping the Arctic wind as trying to hold back the ocean with a fishing net. So, the burning question is, how do these homeless RV dwellers survive the long, dark winter nights without a single drop of fuel for a furnace? The first line of defense in their playbook is what old Elias, a veteran survivalist who lived on the streets for a decade, used to call the Submarine Method. You have to treat your vehicle like it is submerging underwater. If water can get in, heat can get out. This means hunting down every single microscopic gap with obsessive precision. We are not just talking about closing windows. We are talking about shoving foam pool noodles into window frames until they are airtight. It means stuffing industrial pipe insulation around the slide-out seams. Cold air is relentless. It acts like water under pressure. It will find the tiniest crack, and that crack becomes a high-velocity wind tunnel directing freezing air straight into your bone marrow. Then, there is a technique the homeless community swears by, something they elevated from a cheap hack to a survival art form. You grab that shrink film from a hardware store, the kind usually meant for packaging, and tape it over your windows. But here is the trick. You hit it with a hairdryer until it is drum tight. Boom. You have just engineered a dead air pocket between you and the freezing glass. Physics dictates that static air is a fantastic insulator. You have effectively cut your thermal loss by nearly 30% for the price of a cup of coffee. But old Elias taught me not to forget the draft snakes. He didn't use store-bought ones. He used old denim jeans stuffed with dried rice. It sounds ridiculous, primitive even, but it works beautifully to block the icy fingers creeping under the doors. Some solutions, it seems, simply never go out of style because physics doesn't change. However, here is the silent killer that most rookies miss entirely: the floor. This is your biggest enemy. Think about it. A house sits on a concrete foundation connected to the thermal mass of the earth. An RV sits on rubber tires, suspended over nothing but a swirling abyss of frozen air. The cold doesn't just seep up, it launches an assault through the floorboards like it has a personal vendetta against you. Experienced homeless dwellers figured out a clever workaround. They stopped trying to heat the whole box. Instead, they hang heavy blankets as room dividers. Why fight a losing battle to warm 40 square feet when you only occupy 8? By shrinking your survival zone down to just the bed area, you are no longer trying to heat a warehouse. You are fortifying a bunker. But sealing gaps is only the beginning. When your windows are essentially giant magnets for ice, you need something stronger. There is a technique widely used by homeless people involving bubble wrap. Yes, the packing material you pop for fun. They call it the Cellular Shield Protocol. It turns out those little trapped air bubbles are some of the most efficient insulators money can buy, and ironically, they cost almost nothing. The application is genius in its simplicity. You take a spray bottle, mist the window with water, and press the bubble wrap directly onto the glass, bubbles facing inward. The surface tension of the water creates an instant, airtight seal. No tape required. This simple protocol cuts window heat loss by up to 50%. 50%. Just from trash you probably have lying around. And the best part? Light still penetrates. Unlike boarding up your windows with cardboard, which turns your shelter into a depressing cave, the Cellular Shield keeps things bright. Old Elias always said that in the dead of winter, depression hits harder than the cold, and living in a dark shoebox is a quick way to lose your mind. But the veterans, the homeless who have survived winters that would break lesser men, take this a step further. They utilize a material called Reflectix. You have seen it, that shiny silver bubble material that looks like it belongs on a NASA spacecraft. It costs about $1 per square foot, but its value is priceless. They cut it to fit every single window with surgical precision. But here is the science. Instead of just blocking the cold, it acts like a thermal mirror. It bounces your own body heat right back at you. Some folks line their entire ceiling with this silver skin. It makes perfect sense because heat rises. Your thin roof is basically a launch pad for all that precious warmth you are generating. The Reflectix stops it dead in its tracks. But here is where the strategy gets truly advanced. The real pros build what they call Reflectix cocoons around just their sleeping quarters. They forget about the rest of the vehicle. They create a tiny, heat-reflecting fortress surrounding their bed. Everything they generate, every BTU of body heat, stays trapped inside that small silver space. It is exactly like sleeping inside a baked potato wrapper. A weird comparison, I admit, but scientifically accurate. Old Elias tried this in his fishing cabin one particularly brutal winter. He told me he felt like a leftover meal being reheated in an oven, but he also said it worked better than his actual heater. Windows and ceilings matter, but there is something stealing even more heat, hiding right beneath your feet, waiting to drain the life out of you. Windows and ceilings matter, but for homeless people trying to survive the night, there is a thief stealing even more heat, hiding right beneath their feet. It is an invisible enemy that turns even the most insulated RV into an icebox. Here is the physics problem that most people never consider. An RV sits on rubber tires, not a solid foundation. This means there is literally a high-velocity wind tunnel running underneath the entire vehicle. For a homeless family trying to sleep inside, that wind tunnel is extracting heat every single second. Cold air rushes beneath the floorboards, pulls warmth down through the thin metal undercarriage, and dissipates it into the freezing night. It is exactly like trying to stay warm while standing on a frozen lake in your socks. It doesn't matter how many heavy blankets you pile on top if the Arctic assault keeps attacking from below. The experienced homeless dwellers figured this out of necessity, not choice. Their solution is a technique borrowed from structural engineering called skirting. Basically, you have to construct a barrier around the entire base of the RV to block that freezing wind. In the world of high-budget camping, people buy expensive vinyl skirts. But on the streets, survival requires creativity. I have seen homeless communities use straw bales. They stack them around the base of the vehicle, creating a thick, organic wall. In rural areas, this is genius because straw is practically free after harvest season, and it is an incredible insulator. But in the city, where straw isn't an option, they scavenge for something else, discarded political campaign signs. You know the ones. Those rigid, corrugated plastic signs that politicians leave on every street corner after an election. They are waterproof, surprisingly sturdy, and most importantly, free. It is perhaps the only time a campaign promise actually keeps someone warm. By taping these signs together, they create a dead air pocket underneath the RV. This simple act of scavenging can raise the floor temperature by 10 to 15 degrees. That is the critical difference between your feet going numb and actually being able to fall asleep. However, there is a trap here that catches the inexperienced. Rookie survivalists often try to seal this skirt completely tight, thinking that blocking all air is the goal. That is a dangerous mistake. If you seal it too tight, moisture builds up underneath. Condensation from the ground, vapor from temperature differences. In freezing conditions, that trapped moisture turns into ice, cracks the pipes, and breeds toxic mold. It is a delicate balancing act. You need to block the wind, but leave just enough gap for the structure to breathe. Too open, and you freeze. Too sealed, and you rot. Speaking of rotting, the heating methods we are about to uncover next create a completely different nightmare inside the vehicle. And trust me, waking up to find the walls of your shelter coated in ice is a psychological blow that hits different. Now, let's talk about generating heat without electricity. This gets a little medieval, literally. There is a method widely used by homeless dwellers that looks like a magic trick, but is actually ancient physics. It is called the clay pot reactor, or commonly known as the terracotta pot heater. It sounds like something a YouTuber made up for views, but European peasants used ceramic heating principles centuries before central heating existed. The setup is deceptively simple. You take a clay flower pot, flip it upside down, and place it over a few tea light candles. The porous clay absorbs the intense heat from the small flames, traps it, and then radiates it slowly outward like a miniature ceramic fireplace. 4 tiny candles under a 6-inch pot can raise the temperature of a small, enclosed sleeping nook by 10 to 15 degrees. It costs about $2 to set up. But the real genius is the thermal mass. Even after the candles burn out, that hot clay continues to release warmth into the air for another hour. Homeless RV dwellers don't try to heat the whole vehicle with this. That's impossible. Instead, they use it to warm their hands or a very small zone. But I have to be incredibly clear about this. This method is playing with fire. In a confined space like an RV, even small candles produce carbon monoxide. Without ventilation, this survival hack becomes a silent executioner. Plus, clay pots can explode from heat stress if not handled right. I have seen the aftermath when a candle tips over. It is not pretty. Yet, when you have no money and it is 20 below zero, a $2 heater is better than freezing to death. But there is one heat source that is safer, costs absolutely nothing to run, and uses a fuel you are already carrying. It is a technique that old Elias, the veteran I mentioned, swore by. He told me that the most expensive sleeping bag in the world is useless if you climb into it cold. Your body wastes precious calories just trying to warm up that icy fabric. Enter the liquid core reactor, or as your grandmother called it, the hot water bottle. It turns out Grandma was a survival expert. Water has an incredibly high specific heat capacity, meaning it holds thermal energy far longer than air or stone. Filling a sturdy bottle with hot water and tucking it at the foot of your sleeping bag 30 minutes before bed transforms your bedding into a preheated paradise. That single bottle can radiate warmth for 6 to 8 hours. No electricity, no propane, no risk of dying from fumes. But here is where desperate people make a critical error. They grab standard plastic soda bottles. Bad idea. Cheap plastic warps under near boiling water. It cracks, it leaks. And waking up soaked in a puddle of freezing water at 2 a.m. in a homeless encampment is not just uncomfortable, it is a fast track to hypothermia. The veterans know to use Nalgene bottles or similar thick polymers that can take the heat. Some even go further back in history, heating large flat stones on a camp stove, wrapping them in towels and sliding them into their bed. It is primitive, yes, but when you are homeless, primitive means tested by time. But external heat sources have limits. When the mercury drops into the single digits, the most reliable furnace isn't one you build, it is the one you inhabit. Here is the biological reality. Your body is essentially a biological space heater. Every single night, your metabolism pumps out roughly 100 watts of thermal energy. That is the equivalent of leaving a bright incandescent light bulb burning for 8 hours straight. In a freezing RV, that warmth is pure currency. So, what do experienced homeless dwellers do when the temperature becomes critical? They stop fighting the war alone. It is a tactic as old as humanity, communal hibernation. Couples press together like human puzzle pieces. Pet owners suddenly find their dogs to be the most valuable survival tool they own. A medium-sized dog generates about the same heat as a small ceramic heater. But in some homeless encampments, I have seen this taken to a tactical extreme with a rotation system. On the deadliest nights, 3 or 4 people will pile into one vehicle. It sounds cramped, miserable even. But in the equation of survival, cramped and warm always beats spacious and hypothermic. To trap that biological heat, you need the right containment field. Sleeping bags rated for 0 degrees aren't a luxury item for the homeless. They are life support systems. These bags are engineered to capture every joule of energy you radiate and bounce it right back at you. And old Elias taught me one non-negotiable rule: never sleep without a hat. Your head is a chimney, releasing about 10% of your total body heat. Sleeping without a hat is like trying to heat a house with the front door open. Then there is the internal fuel protocol. Before crawling into that sleeping bag, the veterans eat something high in fat, Usually peanut butter because it is cheap and shelf-stable. This isn't a midnight snack, it is stoking the boiler. The fat digests slowly, keeping your metabolism revved up and generating internal heat throughout the long dark hours. However, body heat alone cannot always win against a negative 20-degree assault. When the cold becomes an immediate threat to life, most homeless RV dwellers turn to the heavy artillery. It brings real warmth, but it also brings a deadly, two-pronged attack. I am talking about propane heaters, specifically those portable Mr. Buddy units. They are ubiquitous in winter homeless communities. Why? Because they actually work. One small canister can turn a freezing metal box into something survivable. But here is the devil's bargain that comes with burning propane indoors. First, there is the crystal trap. Burning propane creates moisture, a lot of it. A single heater running through the night pumps a gallon of water vapor into that tiny sealed space. In freezing temperatures, that moisture has nowhere to go. It bonds to your windows, your walls, and your ceiling. By morning, you are no longer in an RV. You are waking up inside an igloo, with ice crystals coating every surface. It destroys the vehicle and soaks your gear. The counter move sounds insane. You have to crack a window. You are running a heater to stay warm, yet you must let cold air in. It feels like using an umbrella with holes, but that ventilation is the only thing preventing you from being encased in ice. Then there is the economic brutality. A 1-pound propane canister lasts about 4 hours. At $4 or $5 a pop, a homeless person is burning $35 a week just to not freeze. That is a brutal calculation. Warmth versus groceries, comfort today versus fuel for tomorrow. But even if you manage the moisture and afford the fuel, propane brings the ultimate assassin, the phantom sleeper, or carbon monoxide. It has no smell, it has no taste, you cannot see it. That is why it claims lives in homeless encampments every single winter without fail. The terrifying part is the method of execution. It makes you sleepy. You are cold, you are tired, and you drift off, thinking you are just finally getting some rest. You never wake up. It is nature's perfect assassin. I have seen people try to run their vehicle's engine for heat, a desperate rookie mistake. Exhaust seeps in through gaps in the floorboards you didn't even know existed. The only defense against the phantom sleeper is a battery-powered sensor. It costs less than $20, less than 2 tanks of propane. Yet, people skip it. They think they will be careful. But you cannot be careful with a gas that mimics the symptoms of exhaustion. Headache, dizziness, weakness. These are exactly how you feel when you are freezing and starving. One experienced nomad told me his dead man-s rule. Never sleep with a combustion device running unless you have a working detector and a cracked window. No exceptions, not even when it is 20 below. Aid organizations that help these communities know this. Their top priority isn't just blankets, it is free CO detectors. It is the cheapest life insurance policy in existence. Surviving the winter in a tin can isn't just about battling the cold. It is a constant chess match against physics, chemistry, and your own biology. And for the homeless people living this reality, winning simply means waking up to see the sun rise one more time.